Okay, so the welding is done. That corner is back together. And she's up on the ramps. And obviously the engine's back in. Okay, nice. So we've got two new mounts for the steering rack, and we've also got some new bolts for the anti-roll bar because they were a bit they snapped when they came out. So they're all good to go. Just need to do a bit of silver paint touch up on the water pump and the crankshaft pulley, and hopefully in the next week I'm going to try and get her started. I'm sort of thinking about it, and I can see no reason why I can't get this started. Obviously, when you put the shell back on, there are things like the ignition, the battery, which obviously sit, and the coil, which sit in the actual body rather than on the engine block. However, we should still be able to just slap a battery on it, stick the coil on into the distributor, whack some fuel in the carbs, and then crank it over, and it should go. So stay tuned for that one. I'm going to try and do that in the next week or so. But before I do any of that, the old oil filter is going to come off. Hopefully that'll want to come off. If not, apparently you just whack a screwdriver through it and use that to crank it off. Take the sump off. And then we're going to do an oil change on it and put a new sump gasket on, and I'll clean the sump out just to make sure there's no crap in it, any old metal. Remember the state of the engine block, so you know we're going to get rid of all the old oil that's in it at the moment. Annoyingly, obviously, because I can't start it, I can't warm the oil, so I'm just going to pull the plug in a minute, let it drain out while I have some lunch, and then we'll get some fresh oil in her, turn her over a few times, get a fresh filter on, all in progress for ready to get her started up. So yeah, it's starting to look something like a car now. Now, one of the comments I had in the previous video, because obviously we've done so much welding on the chassis, is that, you know, it wouldn't probably be considered ultimately safe because it's had so much welding on it. Even if the welding's done to a good standard, you know, you've always got that risk now that, you know, there could be, you know, more corrosion going on inside it. Maybe it's weakened it somewhere you haven't found. There's all those sort of variables that you just don't know. So I am on the lookout for another chassis. Should one come up locally that isn't already rusted to hell. I've seen a few for sale, but most of them have been patched in, and looking at the welding jobs on them, they're no better than mine. So I'm loath to go and spend hundreds of pounds on something which is essentially what I've already got. The advantage I've got with this is that I now know what's going on with it. I've been around the entire thing with a panel hammer, so I know the weak areas. All the weak areas have been cut out and replaced with good steel, so there's no reason why it shouldn't be absolutely fine. But, you know, like I say, because it's had so many patches in the past, and I've now put patches in on it, I'm going to keep my ear to the ground for a new one. If I can pick up another chassis sometime soon, it's not going to be too much of a ball ache to get all this back off again. You know, an afternoon's work with a couple of us, we can strip all this back off again. Still got the engine hoist, so we can have that out, take all the corners off, and basically drop it onto a better chassis should one come up. But for the time being, I am happy with what I've done. So, we're going to carry on going. Oil. Surprising amount of it as well for a reasonably small engine. I mean, I suppose it's a 1500, it's not that small, but yeah, it's quite a lot in there. And of course, true to form, oil filter is completely jammed on. I don't have like a strap wrench or anything to get around it, so as you can see, we've just hammered a screwdriver through it, and I think if I can do both at the same time, we should. Gosh, she's tight. But she is coming. Right, let's have another go at this. Right, old oil out. New oil filter on. And we've also pulled the sump off. You can guess what it looked like inside after 10 years of being stood in a barn. It was pretty minging. Lots of congealed oil, some damp in there. But yeah, giving that a scrub and a clean out. good as new. That's the good thing with sumps is, because they're always full of oil, they don't tend to rust. So we'll give that one a lick of the old classic black hammerite. Not on the inside, obviously. And then I'm going to get the sander on these seams, rub these back. There's a bit of the old gasket ingrained on there, so we'll rub them back, get a nice clean edge. Do the same on the bottom of the block in there, and then we'll get a new gasket in there. Whack some fresh oil in there when I can go and get some. And that's 5.5 litres of old engine oil, decanted into bottles, ready to be taken down the recycling centre. And I can see it very well because the light's washing it out, but that's the bottom of the engine there with the sump removed. Oil pick up, it's all looking good, and I've just been around that with a razor blade and just scraped off the old sump gasket. Of course, the gaskets on these old cars tend to be cardboard, so actually when they stick they tend to leave loads of cardboard behind. But we've got our new gasket there ready to go on. That's the old one in bits. First of all, just going to give the actual sump itself a lick of paint. Then I'll go and get some more engine oil. Get some fresh blood in this and the old girl. Yeah, and that'll be one more job ticked off the list. So moving on to the alternator briefly, I've got a bit of a problem. The car came with two alternators. It came with this one, which looks to be the original one. It's a Lucas one, which I'm guessing is, judging by the signs of wear on it. It looks pretty old to me. And also it came with the newer one, which was this one. I've actually cleaned this one up and I've bolted it onto the car temporarily. But they're two different alternators. They're actually different sizes as well. Now the problem I have is this one, as you can see, it has this keyway on the drive spindle. Okay, fine. However, when you put the fan on, it just moves around. If I rotate it so you can see the tooth on the drive there, there's loads of room in it and this thing just wiggles around. So maybe this is just worn, I don't know. And then when we put the pulley on, same thing. The pulley has actually got a slight groove in there for that keyway, and if I line it up on that keyway, you can see there's just loads of slop in it. So either the pulley and the fan are worn, but judging by the depth of the pulley, I can't really see how it could wear all the way through like that. That's a thick old piece of metal. Or this isn't the pulley for that alternator. Well, that isn't the original alternator. As you can see, it is a Lucas one, which makes me think this is the original one. So, onto the spare alternator. So I'm guessing even if I got the pulley on that one probably doesn't work, hence why it came with two. So I'm guessing that was the old one, and he's bought this new one to put on it. Of course, you can put the drive on this one. This one's actually got a threaded collar that goes onto it, which is fine. However, due to the way they interface, if I obviously tighten up against there, it's going to tighten up against the body and it isn't going to rotate. So I need something to go down into that recess that's going to bind against that and the bottom of the pulley, and then hope that that pulley lines up with the other two. It's very difficult to tell from looking at it. It looks about right, but it is very difficult to tell. So I'm going to find a tubular piece of steel that will just slip over that drive, go down, touch that slight ridge you can see on the inside, which does rotate with the spindle. So if I can get it to clamp against that ridge and the bottom side of that pulley, even just a friction clamp, hopefully that'll be enough. I don't know if it will or not, but other than buying a new alternator, I'm a bit sort of out of ideas with this one. I want to get the alternator on if I can get the engine running so that I can test to see if it works, obviously. Okay, sump is back on, new gasket, lick of paint, she's good to go. I filled it up with some old engine oil from my van for a moment. It's good engine oil, but I'm just using it to flush it through, and then I'll pull the plug and put some fresh oil in it. Also, managed to get this alternator to fit. So this is a left-hand sided alternator, whatever side it doesn't want to be, which means it had the extra part back there, which was hitting the rocker cover. So I had to take an angle grinder to that and take that lip off there, which allowed it to sit over that way, just enough to get the belt on. With the pulley, you can just about see behind the pulley there's an aluminium sleeve. So I found a bit of aluminium tube in the workshop, which was just the right diameter to slip over that thread. Cut it down to about 10mm long, put the pulley on top, and then do the nut up nice and tight, and that is now basically a friction fit. That pulley is pushing against that collar, which is then obviously interacting with the part of the alternator that spins. So I've got the breaker bar on the crankshaft here, so if we go around, you can see that it's all going around nicely. There we go. Obviously when it's spinning at full RPM, you know, I'll keep an eye on it, make sure it's you know, all straight and true, but from where I am, it looks pretty good. It fits. So I'm happy with that. So that is another job done on the car. So I know I keep saying about trying to actually get this thing started, but I will do that at some point soon. But yeah, we're getting there.